Ever tried finding your way through a place where everything looks exactly the same? That's what the Arctic is like in the winter, a vast white landscape where one snowy hill looks just like another. But the Inuit people have figured out something pretty clever. They use the wind as their personal compass. In many parts of the Arctic, the wind has a habit of blowing from the same direction, usually from the north or northeast. It's like having a built-in GPS system, except instead of a robotic voice telling you where to go, you've got a freezing breeze slapping you in the face. The Inuit have actually named these winds based on where they come from, and they can identify up to 16 different directions just by feeling the wind on their faces. Talk about having a sixth sense. What's really amazing is how much the Inuit trust the wind when everything else fails. Even in the worst conditions, when visibility is so bad you can barely see your own feet, experienced hunters can still find their way home just by paying attention to which way the wind is blowing. It's like having a weather vane permanently installed in your brain. But here's where it gets interesting. The Inuit have such a deep understanding of these wind patterns that they've created an entire vocabulary around them. They don't just know north and south, they've got words for all those tricky in-between directions too. As one elder put it, as long as you know where the winds blow, you can know where you're going. Though I bet they wish sometimes that the winds could be a bit warmer. Speaking of finding your way around, the Inuit have a completely different way of looking at maps compared to what most of us are used to. When Europeans first brought their paper maps to the Arctic, the Inuit probably looked at them the same way most of us look at our grandmother's smartphone, with a mix of confusion and amusement. European maps show everything from a bird's eye view, with neat little lines and grids everywhere. It's like trying to navigate your neighborhood by looking at it through Google Earth, except without the helpful "You are here" pin. The Inuit take a completely different approach. Their maps aren't something you can fold up and stick in your pocket. They exist in their minds and stories. They see the land from ground level, the way you actually experience it when you're walking around. Instead of measuring exact distances, they focus on what you'll see along the way. It's less "turn left in 500 meters" and more "keep going until you see that weird-looking rock that kind of resembles your Uncle Bob." What makes Inuit maps really special is that they're always changing. Unlike paper maps that become outdated the moment an ice shelf breaks off or a new trail forms, Inuit knowledge adapts to these changes. Their mental maps update faster than your phone's navigation app, and they don't need Wi-Fi to do it. They pass this information down through stories, describing routes and landmarks in ways that capture both the physical features and their cultural significance. The flexibility of Inuit mapping really shows its value when conditions change. While a European map might show you a perfectly good route that's actually been blocked by a newly formed ice crack, Inuit knowledge would have already adapted to include this change. It's like having a living, breathing GPS system that knows about road closures before they even happen. As important as these mental maps are, the Inuit also rely heavily on physical landmarks to find their way around their vast, snowy world. The stars that most of us see as just twinkling dots in the sky serve as a sophisticated navigation system for the Inuit people. Most of us can barely find the Big Dipper in the night sky, and here's the Inuit using entire constellations to find their way home. For them, the stars aren't just pretty lights in the sky, they're street signs written in starlight. Different star clusters have specific names that match up with landmarks on the ground. The Northern Cross, for example, might point to where certain mountain ranges are, while other star patterns lead straight to the best hunting spots. The North Star plays an especially clever role in Arctic navigation, but not in the way you might expect. Sure, it points north, that's kind of its whole thing, but the Inuit use it more like a level in a carpenter's toolkit. They watch how high it sits above the horizon to figure out if they've drifted too far in one direction. If the star seems lower or higher than usual, they know they've moved from their usual hunting grounds. It's basically the world's biggest "you are here" sign. The moon gets its share of attention too. While most of us just use it for romantic walks or werewolf warnings, the Inuit track its path across the sky like it's a giant clock combined with a compass. The way it rises and sets tells them not just what time of year it is, but also helps them keep track of how far they've traveled. They can tell the difference between December and January just by looking at the moon's position, which is more than most of us can do with a calendar hanging right in front of us. Of course, Stars and the moon aren't much help when it's cloudy, or during the summer months when the sun barely sets. That's when knowing how to read ice and snow becomes crucial. Next time you're grumbling about scraping ice off your car windshield, remember that the Inuits see ice as an entire language waiting to be read. For them, navigation through the Arctic isn't just about knowing which direction to go. It's about reading the frozen landscape like a map that's constantly being rewritten by nature itself. Take snowdrifts, for example. These aren't just annoying piles of snow that the wind decided to dump in your path. The way snowpacks and drifts actually reveals what's hiding underneath and helps chart the safest route forward. If you find smooth, tightly packed snow, you're probably walking on stable ground that's good for traveling. But if the snow is deep and loose, you might want to change course. There could be a sneaky slope or an avalanche-prone area lurking below. It's like having X-ray vision, minus the fancy superhero costume. The cracks in ice tell their own stories too, helping create mental pathways across frozen lakes and seas. Those spiderweb patterns you see spreading across frozen lakes aren't just nature's attempt at abstract art. They're actually giving away secrets about which routes are safe to travel. The Inuit know that certain crack patterns mean the ice is thick enough to walk on, while others scream "danger" louder than your mum when you're about to do something stupid. They can read these patterns so well that they can plot entire journeys across the ice, even in the darkest winter months. But perhaps the most fascinating part is how they understand different types of ice textures to plan their routes. Milky, rotten-looking ice means it's been warming up and isn't trustworthy, kind of like that leftover takeout that's been sitting in your fridge for a week. Clear, solid ice, on the other hand, means temperatures have been consistently cold and you're good to go. As impressive as all this ice reading is, there's another fascinating way the Inuit navigate their frozen world: by watching the local wildlife. If animals could talk, they'd probably tell us that humans are terrible at finding their way around. Fortunately for the Inuit, they've learned to understand what Arctic animals are saying through their behaviors and movements. It's like having a wilderness version of Google Maps, except instead of a blue dot showing your location, you've got caribou herds and Arctic foxes pointing the way. Birds are particularly chatty when it comes to giving directions. When massive flocks of seagulls, geese, and ravens start heading south, it's not because they've booked a winter vacation in Miami. These migrations tell the Inuit exactly when seasons are changing and which way is south. Though you have to admit, those birds might be onto something with the whole winter in Florida thing. Caribou, those majestic Arctic wanderers, serve as four-legged GPS devices. Their grazing patterns reveal more than just where to find the best Arctic salad bars. They show where the ground is stable enough for travel and where good hunting spots might be. When a herd moves in a particular direction, it often means there's a safe ice crossing ahead. It's like they're saying, "Hey humans, follow us, we know a shortcut." Fox tracks in the snow tell stories about the terrain that even the most detailed maps miss. When fox prints bounce around playfully, it's a good sign the ground underneath is solid and safe. But if those tracks look careful and hesitant, like a teenager trying to sneak in past curfew, it's probably best to find another route. The foxes aren't just leaving paw prints, they're leaving travel reviews written in snow. While these animal behaviors provide reliable navigation clues, the Inuit also keep their eyes on the sky above, and not just to watch for more migrating birds. The clouds themselves have quite a story to tell. Looking up at clouds isn't just for daydreamers. In the Arctic, it's a vital navigation skill. You might see a bunny or a dragon in those fluffy white shapes, but the Inuits see a detailed weather forecast and navigation guide floating right above their heads. Those puffy cumulus clouds hanging out on the horizon aren't just there to make pretty sunset photos. When they show up, they're usually bringing good news about fair weather ahead. On the flip side, if you spot dark, streaky clouds moving in, it's nature's way of posting a storm-coming warning. It's more reliable than your local weather app, and you don't even need to worry about your data plan. The shadows that clouds cast on the ground turn the Arctic landscape into a giant relief map. Dark patches of cloud shadows reveal the land's true shape, showing valleys, hills, and ridges that might be hidden under snow. It's like having a drone's eye view of the terrain, except the drone is actually just a really big, fluffy cloud. And unlike modern technology, these cloud shadows never need charging or software updates. Those long, low nimbostratus clouds that stretch across the sky like a giant grey blanket. They're basically nature's traffic lights. When Inuit travelers spot these clouds, they know it's time to decide whether to push forward or wait things out. These clouds are famous for bringing snow, lots of it. But even with all this cloud-reading knowledge, there's one weather condition that can make even the most experienced Inuit navigator pause: fog. In the Arctic, fog is like nature's way of pulling a giant white blanket over everything. Except this blanket isn't cozy or comforting. When thick fog rolls in, even the most skilled Inuit navigators face their biggest challenge. All those carefully memorized landmarks, gone. The helpful wind directions, almost useless. It's like trying to find your way through your house with a blindfold on, except your house is the size of a small country and everything is frozen. But here's where the real mastery of Inuit navigation shines through. Instead of panicking, when the world turns into a swirling white soup, they stay calm and tap into their other senses. They listen for the sound of waves crashing against ice sheets, which tells them where the open water is. They pay attention to subtle changes in the wind on their faces. Some can even smell the difference between land and sea ice through the fog, a skill that would make a bloodhound jealous. During these whiteout conditions, the Inuit follow one golden rule: don't rush. While most of us would be tempted to keep moving in hopes of finding something familiar, experienced travelers know better. They'll often make a temporary camp and wait it out, rather than risk getting even more lost. It's probably the only time in history when sitting around doing nothing is actually the smart choice. They also have some clever tricks for foggy situations. The direction of snowdrifts can still be felt under their feet. Animal sounds, even faint ones, can indicate which way land lies. And sometimes, the faintest glow of light through the fog can reveal where the sun is, giving them at least a basic sense of direction. These navigation techniques have helped the Inuit survive and thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments.